You've watched the films, you've seen the elves sail away, you've accepted their distant wisdom and their graceful tragedy. But what if almost everything you know about them was wrong? Tolkien's writings contain revelations so fundamental that they shatter the movie version entirely. Today, we're exposing 7 profound truths that change what the elves really were. Elves who die in battle stay dead. In the films, an elf's death in battle is final and tragic, but Tolkien's writings reveal that almost every elf who falls in combat doesn't actually stay dead. When Haldir falls at Helm's Deep, the moment carries the weight of finality. We understand that an immortal being has been cut down and lost forever. For movie-only viewers, well, this reinforces a clear assumption. If an elf dies in battle, that elf is gone. Immortality protects against aging and disease, but not from death itself. But Tolkien's texts reveal a different mechanism entirely. When an elf's body is destroyed in battle, their spirit departs to the halls of Mandos in the Undying Lands. After a period of time, they're rehabilitated and reborn with a new body, and they retain all memories of their past lives. Tolkien explains, the elves were not subject to disease, but they could be slain. That is, their bodies could be destroyed. But this didn't lead naturally to death. They were rehabilitated and reborn and eventually recovered memory of all their past. The key exception, an elf may choose not to return. Meriel, Fëanor's mother, refused rebirth. Additionally, elves who committed great evil could be held in Mandos indefinitely by the Vala himself, prevented from returning. The tragedy of an elf's death in battle is real, but it's not absolute. It's a separation and a suffering, not an ending. This reframes the sacrifice of elves in the War of the Ring. They risk pain and loss of time, but cannot be utterly destroyed. Eldar is just another word for elf. The elves are often referred to as the Elder, but few understand what that name truly means or why the Valar gave it to them. Casual viewers might assume Eldar is simply another word for elf, equivalent to the terms used for different races. It's a name we hear throughout the films, but its significance is never explained. We don't learn why they're called this or what it reveals about their nature. To understand the name Eldar, we must look at elvish origins. The elves awoke in Middle-earth long before the sun and moon were created. The only light they ever knew was starlight. This fundamental experience shaped their entire civilization. Tolkien writes that the Valar named the elves Eldar, which means people of the stars. This wasn't arbitrary. The elves' first sight upon waking was the stars shining in the darkness. That celestial light became sacred to them, woven into their culture, art, and understanding of beauty itself. Beyond symbolism, starlight served a practical purpose. Elves require far less sleep than men and can endure long stretches without rest when necessary. The stars provided navigation and guidance through the darkness, essential resources for a race that had never known daylight. The name Eldar encapsulates the elves' ancient connection to light in the heavens. It speaks to their origins in a world of starlight and their ability to thrive in darkness where man would falter. It's a name rooted in cosmology and necessity, revealing something fundamental about what the elves are, beings shaped by starlight from their very first moment of existence. All elves have equal power and wisdom. Not all elves are created equal. In Tolkien's world, there exists a distinct class of elves far more powerful and wise than the rest, the High Elves, and only a handful remained during the event of the Lord of the Rings. The films present Galadriel as exceptional among elves, but don't clearly explain why. Movie viewers might assume all elves possess similar power and wisdom. They don't grasp that Galadriel belongs to a completely different category of being, one that includes fewer than a handful of individuals in all of Middle-earth during the Third Age. High Elves, also called Calaquendi or Elves of the Light, are those who lived in Aman, the Undying Lands, and witnessed the divine radiance of the 2 sacred trees, Laurelin and Telperion. This experience fundamentally transformed them, granting them powers beyond ordinary elves. Tolkien writes of the High Elves' power. The Noldor, outnumbered and taken at unawares, were yet swiftly victorious. For the light of Aman was not yet dimmed in their eyes. and they were strong and swift and deadly in anger, and their swords were long and terrible. Being bathed in the sacred light of the trees granted High Elves superior strength, speed, and clarity of vision. Galadriel was not merely born among those trees, she was raised beneath their light. Tolkien notes that her hair actually reflected a portion of that divine radiance, which is why Peter Jackson depicted her with an ethereal glow in the films. By the Third Age, the number of High Elves remaining in Middle-earth was extremely small. Of those named with certainty, only 3 remained: Galadriel, Glorfindel, and Gildor Inglorian. A possible 4th was Maeglin, Fëanor's son, though his fate is unclear. When Frodo encounters Galadriel's kinfolk in the Fellowship, Frodo recognizes them as High Elves, remarking, "Not many now remain in Middle-earth, east of the Great Sea." High Elves represent the pinnacle of elvish power and wisdom, beings who carry within them the memories of divine light itself. Their rarity makes them precious and their choice is momentous. Galadriel's significance in The Lord of the Rings becomes even clearer when we understand she is one of perhaps 4 High Elves still walking Middle-earth. The elves left Middle-earth all at once. In the films, we witness the elves' final exodus, a grand departure where they sail away into legend. But Tolkien's writings reveal something far more complex. The elves never left all at once. Their departure spanned thousands of years. Peter Jackson's Return of the King features an iconic scene of vast elvish ships departing for the Undying Lands. The impression is one of finality. This is the moment where the elves leave Middle-earth. The audience understands that with this voyage, the Age of Elves has ended. The majority of elves are gone. This era concluded in a single visually stunning moment. But Tolkien's texts reveal that this is a dramatic oversimplification. The elves' departure from Middle-earth was not a unified exodus occurring at one moment. Instead, it was a gradual, staggered process spanning multiple ages. Different groups of elves left at different times for different reasons. The First Age saw the first major departures. After Morgoth's defeat, many elves sailed west, but not all. Tolkien explicitly writes, "Many still remained." Some elves chose to stay in Middle-earth, and their descendants built kingdoms that endured for ages. By the Second Age, further waves of elves departed, particularly after Numenor's destruction. Tolkien notes, "The elves that dwelt in Middle-earth were troubled, and many of them departed from the lands that they had loved." Again, many, not all, not at once. During the Third Age, when the Lord of the Rings occurs, significant elvish kingdoms still function. Thranduil rules Mirkwood. Elrond maintains Rivendell. These are not temporary outposts or garrison cities. They're established realms with deep roots in Middle-earth. When Frodo asks Elrond about the future, Elrond explains that they will eventually sail west, but not immediately. His departure is something to come, not something imminent. The movies compress thousands of years of gradual withdrawal into a single symbolically satisfying moment. Tolkien presents a slower, more poignant reality. The elves don't leave because they suddenly decide to abandon their homes. They depart because the world is changing, men are rising, and the age of elves is waning. Some embrace this transition and sail west. Others linger in their remaining havens, prolonging their presence in a world they love, even as the world shifts around them. This is not a grand exodus. It's a gradual fade. The Undying Lands grant immortality. The Undying Lands are called the Undying Lands for a reason, but the name is deeply misleading. Mortals who travel there do not become immortal, no matter how long they dwell in that realm. The name Undying Lands naturally suggests that anyone who reached that place will gain eternal life. This misconception is so powerful that Sauron himself exploited it. He deceived the men of Numenor by telling them that those who dwelt in Aman would gain eternal life. This lie directly contributed to Numenor's destruction and its submersion beneath the sea. The truth is far simpler and more specific. The Undying Lands are called that because immortal beings live there, not because the place itself grants immortality. Mortal races, including men, hobbits, and dwarves, retain their mortality even if they travel to Aman. Bilbo, Frodo, and Sam all traveled to the Undying Lands after the War of the Ring. Yet their mortality was not altered. They remained mortal beings, aging at the natural rate of their kind. Gimli the dwarf was granted the honor of traveling to Aman with Legolas, a profound privilege, yet he remained a dwarf bound by the mortality inherent to his race. Tolkien makes this clear in the Silmarillion. The Undying Lands are a place of rest and healing for the elves, a paradise where they can recover and be reunited with their kindred. But the land itself does not grant immortality. The elves are immortal because of what they are, not because of where they dwell. The elves' immortality stems from their essential nature as a race. They don't age or sicken, their bodies do not decay. Even if an elf were somehow trapped in Ada's mortal circles, they would not age. Conversely, a mortal being transported to the Undying Lands would eventually age and die, though they might do so slowly and peacefully in that place of healing. This distinction is crucial. Immortality is not a property of geography, it's a property of being. Elves are emotionally distant and serene. In the films, Galadriel speaks in whispers. Legolas delivers his lines with icy composure. The elves are beautiful but distant, serene but removed. But Tolkien's writings reveal something starkly different. The elves are beings of intense emotion, capable of passion and despair as deep as any race of Middle-earth. Peter Jackson's adaptation presents elves as ethereal and otherworldly, defined by emotional detachment and mystical wisdom. They observe events with serene composure, they speak in riddles. Their immortality has supposedly granted them emotional transcendence, a kind of enlightened calm that places them beyond the turbulent emotions that define mortal existence. The elves are beautiful precisely because they're untouched by passion. But Tolkien's writing suggests something radically different. The elves are not emotionally distant, they're beings of overwhelming emotional intensity. And their immortality does not diminish that intensity, it deepens it. Tolkien directly addresses this in his letters. He writes, "The elves were not exempt from the griefs and sorrows of the world. They could love, and they could suffer loss as keenly as men. Indeed, perhaps more so because their capacity to remain was stronger and their affections deeper. Because elves live for ages, they accumulate experiences that deepen rather than dilute their emotions. They do not forget. A joy experienced in the first age remains vivid in the third age. A sorrow endured centuries ago weighs upon them still. Their immortal memory means that every experience, every loss, every joy, every betrayal remains fresh and poignant across the vast spans of their lives. Consider Fëanor, one of the greatest elves of the First Age. His passion drives an entire age of history. When Morgoth steals the Silmarils, the masterwork of his own hands, Fëanor's emotional response is volcanic. "The oath! I will swear an oath upon the Silmarils themselves that I shall recover them, though I burn all the rest of the world in my quest." This is not serene detachment. This is a being consumed by rage and obsession. That oath born from emotional intensity shapes the entire First Age and leads to countless deaths. When Arwen chooses mortality to remain with Aragorn, Elrond grieves that choice deeply, even as he honors it. His love for his daughter and his sorrow at her sacrifice are palpable and profound. These are not emotionally distant beings. These are individuals moved by love and loss as keenly as any race in Middle-earth. The movies present the elves as beings who've transcended emotion through their long lives and immortal wisdom. Tolkien presents the elves as beings whose emotions have been deepened and intensified by their long lives. Every love is richer because they remember 1,000 loves before it. Every sorrow is sharper because they carry the weight of countless sorrows accumulated across the ages. Their emotional intensity is not a flaw. It's the source of their greatest art, greatest deeds, and greatest tragedies. All elves are basically the same. Just as men are divided into different peoples with distinct characteristics, so too are the elves. They're not simply elves. These are 3 different great kindreds, each with their own strengths, appearances, and inclinations. The films treat elves as a relatively uniform race. We see Rivendell elves, Mirkwood elves, and Lothlorien elves, but these distinctions seem primarily geographical rather than fundamental. Movie viewers don't understand that these groups belong to entirely different kindreds, each with distinct traits that have shaped their civilization for ages. Tolkien's writings reveal that the elves are divided into three main kindreds: the Vanyar, the Noldor, and the Teleri. These are not mere political divisions, they're fundamental distinctions rooted in the very nature and character of each group. Understanding these kindreds reshapes how we comprehend elvish history and culture. The Vanyar were the smallest of the three kindreds. They were typically golden-haired and deeply devoted to the Valar themselves. Tolkien describes them as the fairest of all the Eldar. They excelled in poetry, song, and spiritual matters. Most Vanyar remained in Aman and played little role in Middle-earth's history, though their bloodline persists through intermarriage with other kindreds. The Teleri were lovers of the sea and master shipbuilders. They typically had dark or silver hair. This kindred was the most diverse, as many subgroups descended from them: the Sindar, the Nandor, and the Sylvan Elves. Their connection to water and craftsmanship defined their character. They built the great ships and understood the sea as no other elves did. The Noldor were the warriors and craftsmen. They had slightly darker skin and possessed unparalleled skill in both warfare and the creation of great works. Tolkien writes, "The Noldor were the most skilled in craft and in war of all the elves. Many of the greatest figures in the First Age, Fëanor, Fingon, Turgon, were Noldor. They were the architects of the great kingdoms and the fiercest warriors against Morgoth. Importantly, being a high elf and belonging to a kindred are separate designations. A Vanyar could be a high elf, a Noldor could be a high elf. Galadriel herself had blood from all three kindreds. Her paternal grandmother was Vanyar, her grandfather was Noldor, and her mother was Teleri. This mixture of lineages contributed to her exceptional power and wisdom. The three kindreds reveal the diversity within elvish civilization. The Vanyar represent spiritual devotion and artistic beauty. The Teleri represent connection to nature and mastercraft. The Noldor represent ambition, skill in war, and the drive to create lasting works. None is superior to the others. They're simply different expressions of what elves can be. Understanding these kindreds deepens our appreciation for individual elves like Galadriel, whose complex heritage gave her qualities drawn from all three traditions. These 7 truths reshape our understanding of the elves. They're not the serene, distant beings the film suggests. Tolkien's elves are richer, deeper, and far more fascinating than cinema could ever capture. For a deeper dive into the history and nature of every elven realm of Middle-earth, check out our next video, All Elves of Middle-earth Explained in Detail.